Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, the World Health Organization recommends that the world's first malaria vaccine be given to children across Africa, the continent with the majority of global deaths from the mosquito-borne disease. Also, South African utility company Eskom is the worst polluting company in the world. A new study has found it emits more sulfur dioxide than the combined power sectors, the US and China. And we head to Kinshasa, where authorities are rattled by the rise of bombé, a new drug derived from opioids and residue filtered through exhaust pipes. But first, the World Health Organization's recommended that the world's first malaria vaccine be given to children across Africa. The majority of the world's 200 million annual malaria cases are found on the continent, and about 400,000 people die of the mosquito-borne disease every year there. Mosquirix was developed in 1987 and is only about 30% effective with fast-fading protection. Nevertheless, it could make a significant dent in malaria fatalities, perhaps leading to up to 40,000 fewer deaths in Africa a year. Well, Dr. Pedro Alonso is the director of the WHO's Global Malaria Program. He joins me now. Doctor, thanks very much for speaking to me. First of all, give us a bit of a sense of how big an impact this recommendation is likely to make in global efforts to tackle malaria.
Well, as you rightly said in the introduction, we have a still massive problem with malaria. We have more than 200 million cases of malaria every year, more than 400,000 deaths every year. The tools we have right now have allowed us to make major gains over the last 15 years, but we have stalled. We are not making any further progress. And so we desperately need new tools. Having a vaccine, even if it's only a 30 or 40% efficacious vaccine, can make a huge difference. It can save many thousands of lives every year. It can save many hundreds of thousands of malaria episodes every year. And so having for the first time a malaria vaccine is a historical moment. It is a game changer moment. And we're absolutely thrilled about this decision that WHO has taken today.
Now, as you mentioned, it's not a perfect vaccine. It's got quite a low protection rate, relatively. What else needs to happen to decrease the disease burden when it comes to malaria and Africa?
Well, none of our tools are perfect. We are fighting a very complex disease. It's biologically much more complex than any virus or any bacteria. We all are now very acquainted with COVID-19. COVID-19 is a very simple biological organism. The malaria parasite is a very, very complex one. And so developing a vaccine for the first time against a human parasite is a historical feat, a major breakthrough in science. Now, will this be the final solution? No. Will it help us save many lives and many episodes? Absolutely yes. Should we still strive for a high efficacy vaccine, a 90 or 95% efficacious one? Absolutely yes. However, this is the tool we have now, and one that can save lives today. And for the children whose lives can be saved today, this is a miracle. And so we are incredibly excited about this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pedro Alonso there from the WHO. Well, ailing South African utility Eskom's now the world's worst polluting company. A new study released by the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air has found it emits more sulfur dioxide than the combined power sectors of the US and China. Eskom relies on coal for 90% of its electricity generation. Nadine Theron has more.
South African state power supplier Eskom is now the world's worst polluter of sulfur dioxide. It's overtaken even the US and China, who were the world's worst polluters 10 years ago. Today, Eskom's toxic gas emissions are almost as much as these two superpowers combined. While big economies have made big changes to reduce its sulfur dioxide emissions, Eskom hasn't really budged, and it's had a substantial impact on the health of South Africa's people. A 2017 study estimates that around 2,200 people die of air pollution in South Africa annually. Environmental justice organizations have taken the government to court earlier this year in the deadly air case, arguing that a failure to provide clean air is a human rights violation. 80% of South Africa's electricity is generated by coal-fired power stations. A spokesperson for Eskom says it's aware of this problem and it's on its way to retire some coal power stations in a bid to reach a zero emissions target by 2050. South Africa is bound to come under fire at the United Nations Climate Change Conference at the end of the month. Eskom's failure to implement desulfurization equipment at 15 of its coal power plants has ramped up criticism over the past 5 years.
Well, Cameroonian philosopher and historian Achille Bembe has submitted a report to French President Emmanuel Macron on his findings about what it will take to reshape France's relationship with Africa. In it, he's made 13 recommendations that might go some way to redefining the troubled ties between the former colonial power and the continent in which it still wields substantial economic, military and political clout. Bembe says that more than 3,600 people took part in months of dialogue that led up to his findings. Nicolas Chemin from Africa Desk joins us now. Nick, tell us a bit more give us an overview of the Bembe report.
So he says that to prepare this report, he took part in 65 debates in 12 African countries and in France. What's interesting is that he was famous for being a strong critic of France-Afrique and French policies in Africa. And so many were surprised to see that he accepted Macron's offer to write this report, but he did in the end. He wrote 140 pages with 13 recommendations. One of them is to create an institute for Africa and its diaspora, a bit based on the model of the Institute of the Arab World in Paris, which has existed for many years. He also suggests a 15 million euro fund to support civil society in Africa. In this report, he doesn't shy away from controversial issues such as the CFA franc, which is this currency used by many French-speaking countries in Africa and whose stability is guaranteed by Paris. He also mentions the military interventions in Africa, French military interventions, and also France's colonial history. And this is what he writes in the report. He wants the French to discover, I quote, France's African roots and to abandon this myth that French identity is exclusively and eternally European and Catholic.
And so all this is coming just days before this really quite different and important summit being held in France. It's about reshaping ties between France and Africa, but it's not following the normal format. Tell us a bit more about that.
Absolutely. You've had France-Africa summits since 1973. These last 10 years, the Élysée prefers to call them the Africa-France Summit. And this one, it's the first one without any African heads of state invited. This time, Macron has invited hundreds of young African entrepreneurs, activists, athletes, artists, and he's going to debate with 11 of them in the southern city of Montpellier on Friday during this summit. And it must be said that since his election, Macron, he's taken some decisions which have been praised in Africa, for example, recognizing France's role in the genocide of the Tutsis in Rwanda, also announcing that he's going to return some looted artwork to Benin. He's also made some decisions which have not been praised. For example, when Idriss Déby died in Chad, his son took over without organizing elections, and France didn't say anything at all. So some of the activists are hoping that all these different topics will be debated in Montpellier on Friday.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much, Nicolas Chemin, there giving us a bit of an overview of that report by Achille Bembe. Well, we head to Kinshasa now, where authorities are rattled by the rise of bombé. It's a new drug derived from opioids and residue filtered through exhaust pipes. It's believed to have led to a spike in crime across the Congolese capital. Our correspondent sent us this report.
It's already dark when the police begin raiding this rundown estate in a deprived neighbourhood of Kinshasa. The aim of the operation to dismantle a squat occupied by users of bombé, a cheap, highly toxic and addictive homemade drug obtained from mixing medicines such as the opioid tramadol with residue filtered through exhaust pipes.
Here they are. They look like corpses. They are drugged to death. Here are the drugs. Look, a mixture of pills and drugs and so on. When you take this, you're screwed.
The police brutally remove the squat's occupants, some of them barely able to move, one by one with tasers and batons. Outside, women and men are tied to one another and crammed onto the ground.
This bombé drug is a weapon of mass destruction. We will hunt down those who sell it and those who consume it relentlessly so that we can save our people.
Since late August, the Kinshasa police have been cracking down on drug trafficking, making hundreds of arrests, often under pressure from locals complaining about rising crime. This activist, however, says repression is not the solution.
There have always been arrests, but that hasn't stopped people from using drugs. You can see it with your own eyes. These drug addicts are sick. They need to be treated.
Many bombé users suffer from infections and neurological disorders, but few can afford medical care. For the city's governor, police repression is justified. He says that those arrested are sent to rehabilitation centres in the southern Katanga province.
When we send people to Katanga, we make them work on farms, but we also offer back-to-work training schemes. Prisoners can learn a new trade, be it carpentry, masonry, or plumbing, among others.
According to a UN survey, about 8 in 10 young Congolese are unemployed.
And finally, DR Congo and Republic of Congo have launched a campaign to get Congolese rumba added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage. The music and dance first grabbed revelers' attention back in the 40s and has over the decades shifted and changes. But behind all of the interpretations, the original Congolese creation is still recognizable. So we'll leave you with the sounds of a rumba classic. Thanks for joining us. Do so again.